Could you charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
Ethically, under the ethical standards?
Well, I'm not certain because I haven't looked at the ethical standards, but the OLC opinion says that the prosecutor, while he cannot bring a charge against the sitting president, nonetheless he can continue the investigation to see if there are any other persons who might be drawn into the conspiracy.
So there's that. Also, there was another moment today that raised a few eyebrows. Val Demings from Florida. She made headlines with this exchange.
It is fair to say then that there were limits on what evidence was available to your investigation of both Russia election interference and obstruction of justice.
That's true, and it's usually the case.
And that lies by Trump campaign officials and administration officials impeded your investigation.
I would generally agree with that.
Well, joining us now, a guy who's helped us from the very beginning with this, former federal prosecutor Roland Riopelle. And Roland, I want to get to the substance in a minute, but let's do the theater of it. Either Bob Mueller just was the most reluctant witness we've ever seen here in effect here, or he lost a lot on his fastball because there were moments that he seemed unfamiliar with his report. He had to have readbacks all the time. I think people were expecting, I know I was, maybe he wasn't going to be overly forthcoming or voluntary, but he certainly seemed to not have his best day. Would you agree?
He didn't seem that fast on his feet, Richard. I mean, remember, this is now a man who's pushing 75 years of age, and he's apparently a terribly hard worker, but he didn't seem very fast on his feet today. He didn't impress in that way. You're absolutely right.
To that end, before we get into what we did learn, we also learned some things that he chose not to do. Obviously, we know he didn't subpoena the president, but the rationale was he acknowledged in the clip we just showed that the president lied to him in sworn testimony, but he felt like this artificial clock was ticking and that he might as well move on. How did that strike you, Roland? Because if he knows he's going to have somebody potentially lying to him under oath, to me at least, that would say that's even more of a reason to get this guy and put some answers down, face to face.
Yeah. Of course, Richard, keep in mind that he can't indict a sitting president for perjury, just like he can't indict him for any other crime. I think the subtext there is that based on Mr. Trump's written answers, his public propensity for lying every time he opens his mouth, Mr. Mueller felt that, sure, I could fight for a year to get him in a room and have him lie to me face to face when he'd already lied to me in sworn answers that are written. What's the point? Mr. Mueller was going to conclude his investigation, and Mr. Trump was not a witness who was going to provide him with any evidence worth having other than evidence of his own proclivity for lying, which Mr. Mueller already had. You know, we've actually talked a little bit about this before, that Mr. Mueller may not have felt he needed to speak to Trump because he had the answers, and he knew that Trump was not going to give him truthful answers, and so he was not going to advance the investigation in any way.
I mean, think about what was said today, and in any other normal universe, we'd be picking our jaws off the table, that the amount of people attached to the Trump presidential campaign that got convicted, the series of lies, the intent to obstruct the investigation, that Mueller said basically, this ain't over yet. As soon as he leaves office, the OLC, that doesn't apply anymore, and he can be indicted, which at least to me, Roland, was an indication that he believes the president did commit crimes, and indictable ones at that. So to that end, I don't know why the president's doing a victory lap today. I get it from an optics standpoint, but if you just go by the facts, which I know don't seem to matter anymore in 2019, it was devastating for the president.
Yeah, yes, there was a lot of this testimony that was delivered in a very dry and steady and deliberate way, and some would even say kind of, in a 75-year-old's way. But the fact is, Mr. Mueller testified that our president committed acts which are crimes, and he can be charged for those in 2021 if he's not reelected. He said that in response to a Republican congressman's questions. So there's no mystery about that at all. Our president is a felon. And you know what? We knew that already from the Southern District's indictment, in which Mr. Trump is indicted, is described as individual number one, a co-conspirator in violation of the campaign finance laws with Michael Cohen. So the question the American people have to ask themselves is, do we want a criminal in the White House? And are these crimes serious enough to make us decide he shouldn't be there? That's what it comes down to.
And maybe one of the most damning things that came out of today was, if you're President Trump, you say to yourself, you know what? Whether we, and I know you and I believe he did, there was collusion involved here, but not only did I collude, but I then obstructed an investigation. I was found to have done it. The guy told the world I was not exonerated. I basically slow played this thing here so he couldn't serve the subpoenas to who he wanted to. And I made no representation or showed a scintilla of contrition. I might as well do it all over again in 2020. I really don't, from Trump's perspective, given that there isn't shame involved, what's the downside for him to do it all over again?
Oh, I think he said that he would. He was asked recently by a journalist about his son Donald Jr.'s willingness to take that June meeting, and he said, "Oh, it's done all the time. It's opposition research, and there's nothing wrong with that. And sure, he can meet with a foreign power and get dirt on an opponent." I think there's no question President Trump will do this again if he has the opportunity. I don't think he's learned anything from this process. And, he's going to play out of the Trump playbook, which is declare victory, no matter how serious the loss, and move on. And the truth, Richard, is the country is so bifurcated, so divided, that I don't think today's testimony will change anyone's mind. You and I are not going to decide that this is all a hoax and we're going to vote for Mr. Trump next time based on today's testimony. And the people who have decided to support him are not going to decide based on today's testimony that Mr. Trump is unfit for office, and they're not going to vote for him in 2020. I think everybody's just going to go to their corner, and we're going to have a vote in 2020 to see who's going to be president in 2021.
And look at all the damage that happens along the way, including to the Department of Justice and now an Attorney General, we don't have time for it tonight here, who shocks by the day. But anyway, Roland, I appreciate it. I know there's going to be much more to this. Yeah. I will talk to you soon. Thank you for making time as always.
Yeah, happy to come back anytime, Richard. Good to be with you.
You as well. All right, when we come back, we've got a guest who's got a really interesting perspective on this, having seen firsthand what impeachment looks like. Congresswoman who served in the Judiciary Committee during Watergate, she joins us. Liz Holtzman, here to take a look at the parallels between then and now.